Okay.
Ellie says.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay there. Hi, Ellie. How you doing?
Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
Good. Right. Okay, so we are on Chof Beis Amud Aleph. Right, Chof Beis Amud Aleph, and we are up to a story which goes from here until the Mishnah. Interesting story. You see how it's connected to the Gemora that we've been learning. But basically, we've been learning about the sugi of those who what are the restrictions on trade for those who come to another place? Are they just allowed to set up shop? And that depends. Market day, we said things are much more flexible. So market day, it's pretty much open season. You have other people who come from outdoors to sell, and therefore, to buy. Anyone comes from all sorts of places to buy in the market, and therefore you can also sell in the market. That was the case of the basket makers, and they said that was okay. And the other interesting case was the case of the that we just finished with, was the case of the Amoroi, not to be confused with the Amoram of the Gemora, Amoroi with an iron, who sell wool. They sell wool, and they had credit to collect. And they said, if you don't let us sell whilst we're in the town, right, then we can't live. So we're stuck in a catch-22 situation where they need to claim the money back for people who have bought from them in the past. But in order to claim money for people that are back in the past, they have to sell something, otherwise they can't live, right? So it's So therefore they got permission to sell, even though they weren't residents in the town. They got permission to sell whilst they were there, so they could live on. Now, Rav Dimi min Ardor, it's about halfway down the Omid, thereabouts. Chof Beis Amud Aleph. Rav Dimi min Ardor, I see Grogerus Bisfina. Rav Dimi from Nardor, he brought grogers, like figs, in a dried figs, whatever, in a sfina. A sfina is a ship, in a ship. Now, Amale Reish Galusa Rava, the Reish Galusa, who was effectively, it's translated as exiler, but that's a bit of a funny word. But basically, he was the head of the killer in many respects, right? He was kind of like, he said to Rava, he said to Rava, put chazi yitzuv mirabonanhu, nokele shuka. Go and check if he's a Talmid Chacham, or then nokele shuka. And basically, you can hold. It means nokele shuka means that he hold the market for him. He should corner the market and fix. If he's arriving on his ship with a shipload of figs. So tell him. So if he's a Talmid Chacham, hold the market for him. Yeah, we saw this earlier on, that there's preferential treatment given to Talmidei Chachamim, and that's because otherwise they wouldn't be able to learn. So this is his trade. His trade was the figs. In order to facilitate their learning, there has to be a way that the community is responsible to facilitate this. Check him out. If he's a Talmid Chacham, he gets the market for figs. If not, not. Now, that means he has to test him. So Rava said to Rav Ada bar Abba, Puk toile b'kankane. It's a phrase you find many times in the Gemara. Toile b'kankane means basically test him out. Literally it means to smell his wine, the jug of wine, basically, kind of sniff him out. Find out whether he's really up to scratch, whether he really knows his stuff. So basically, we discussed last time that what was that? Sorry, it was don't worry, it was the top of the Omid, basically, where we had the case of that people who peddlers. We said peddlers who come to town, that's fine. That's their job, and Ezra was masakin that they should be able to sell, especially things for adornments or perfumes or whatever. That was one of the takonos of Ezra for Jewish women, but that's only to go around, but not to set up shop there. However, if he's at Sova Me'Rabbanon, we said some chacham, he can even set up shop there. And the Gemora gave an example of Rava who allowed Ashi and Ravadia to set up shop, even though it wasn't according to the strict letter of the law, because otherwise they weren't also the Turidim and Gersayu, they weren't learned properly. Okay, so it's interesting that's actually Rava here as well. So Rava's the one almost like being called to account for his own psak, or maybe that's why the Reish Galusa has gone this in this direction with Rava. He's effectively said to him, look, if it's fine, we'll hold the market for them, we'll let them forward the market and fix, but only if he's really a Talmid Chacham. So Nafak Ozal, so anyway, Rava sends Rav Ada bar Abba. It's important you remember the names, as you'll see. But so you got 3 people involved so far, 4 actually. Reish Galusa, Rav Dimi, Rav Dimi, and Rava, and Rav Ada bar Abba. So Rava sends Rav Ada bar Abba, right? And he says to him, go and find out what he's really like, whether he knows his stuff. Nafak Ozal Boamine, he asked him the following shaila. Pil shabola kfifa mitzvus, an elephant that swallows a basket. A kfifa mitzvus basically is a wicker basket made of aroves, like willow, yeah. And it came out the other exit, the other end of the elephant. Ma, what's the halacha? Now, this is an incredibly strange case, right? And the shaila, the shaila is it considered to have been digested, and therefore it's got a status of kli galolim? Kli galolim is kli kalim made out of animal dung, which they did use in those days for certain things. And then it won't be makabel tumah. Or is it still a basket? If it's still a basket, it's makabel tumah, right? Simple. No one was asking that shaila before. So this is shaila. See, asking shaila, obviously, highly unlikely. That it was a kind of relatively obscure shaila of tumantara, but that was his test. Lo biyode. He didn't know. He didn't know what the answer was. Now, before it's interesting because this particular shaila, I mean, Tosfos points out that that actually this shaila is not resolved. So it's a really difficult question. Meaning, he actually doesn't. It's actually not. It's that the shaila is discussed elsewhere. It's actually discussed in Menachos. This shaila, and the Gemora goes through what you talk in what respect, what you're talking about, whatever. It's the last few lines of Tosfos there, a muscle pill, if you want to see inside. The last few lines, he says, can you see those last 4 lines of Tosfos there, a muscle pill? The kashya, he said, tam. You see that, the last 4 lines? Tam. It was never resolved. How can you ask him a question which even we don't know the answer to?
I don't know is the right answer.
Not quite. In theory, but look, he should have brought the proofs that the Gemara brings there and rejects them. So what he was looking for is asking like a case study, obscure case study, and how are you gonna address this, right? You know, are you gonna just say that's ridiculous? Elephants don't swallow baskets. No, that's the wrong answer in learning, right? It's obviously got an important reason and it's got a practical applications in Hilchos Tumantara. He should have, in Yeshiva word, well, they say he should have known how to handle. You know what I mean? Handle and learning. Handle, it's a good word. That, yeah. He should have known how to. Yeah. Anyway, he didn't. Well, he did. So Amalei said to him. So he said to him, Mar nihu rova. So Rav Dimi says to Rav Ada, are you Rava? Now he thought Rava, okay, was because Rava was the big name in town. Rav Dimi had come on a ship and he knew that Rava was like kind of the big Rava in the city. Are you Rava? He said to him, is this Rava? Right? Tofach le besandale. He hit him on his shoe with a stick, like to make fun of him, right? Now, why did he do that? Well, presumably because he wasn't impressed with the shaila. He wasn't impressed with the question. You know, Rav Dimi had been asked this question. He wasn't impressed with what had gone on, or maybe he was upset with the whole setup or what had happened. And therefore he said to him, are you Rava? And he sort of made a bit of fun of him. So of course it wasn't Rava. What was it? It was Rava's messenger, who was, so I remember the names of Rav Ada bar Abba. He said to him, there's a big difference between me and Rava. Yeah, me al kochach anor rabach, but whether you like it or not, I'm your teacher because I know more than you do. The Rava rabba de rabbath, and Rava is therefore the teacher of your teacher, right? Yes, because Rava is my Rebbe. Okay. So in other words, you're not it wasn't having any of it. Lo nokdulei shukah. They didn't hold the market for him on Postin Grogers today, and his figs went bad. Figs, they must have been fresh figs, actually. I said they were just been fresh, right? He said they didn't hold the market, and that's it, finished. Also, coming to Rav Yosef. So Rav Dimi came in front of Rav Yosef. Amalei said, Chazimar, my avduli. Said to see what they've done, what they did to me. Look what's going on. Amalei said to Mandalo Shehilo and Nisa de Malka de Edom, Lo Nishaylo Niseich. The one who did not delay the oppression of the king of Edom shall not delay your oppression. In other words, a punishment will come for the oppression that you've suffered. It says on account of 3 sins of Moab, and on 4th, I won't turn away from punishing. I will be punished. And what is it that the king of Moab was punished for? Al Sorfim Atzmos Melech Edom. He burnt the bones, cremated the bones of the king of Edom, and as a result of that, it's a posuk in Amos. As a result of that, he was punished for doing so. Now,
Why was he punished?
What? Why was he punished? Well, he should never have done it. It was wrong. It was disgrace. It was a disgrace. Even though, he was the king of Edom. He was an Edomim. We're not exactly friends with the Edomim, but even so, the king of Moab was punished for burning his boat. Right? It was a design. It was a disgrace, terrible thing to do. Right? Shouldn't have done it. It wasn't right to treat the mates that way, even though it was a non-Jewish king, another non-Jewish king, both of whom we're not very friendly with, Moab and Edom. But nevertheless, right? Hashem says he's going to be punished. So therefore, what he was saying was, if Hashem will even claim and claim for the dignity of the king of Edom, yeah. So Rav Yosef says he's definitely going to claim for the disgrace that you've suffered from this sorry situation. You have to remember, Rav Yosef was the Rebbe of Rava, not mistaken, as well, or at least I think so. Yes, Bain Rava thinks so. Anyway, Noch Nafshe. There were different stages. I think Rava learned under Rabbah, and then I think after he learned under Yosef, I think. Anyway, Noch Nafshe, the Rav Ada bar Abba. So, Noch Nafshe Rav Ada. Now, the terrible thing happened. Rav Ada bar Abba died. Okay, so Rav Ada bar Abba was the one who posed the questions, right? Okay, and he died. So the big question now is, who caused his death through this whole story? Rav Yosef, says, I caused him to be punished. I cursed him. Right? Rav Yosef was the one who pronounced the curse, didn't he? Rav Yosef was the one who said that Hashem, who punishes even those who disgrace the king of Edom, is going to punish those who punish you. Right? He's going to do this to you. Rav Dimi ben Ardot says, I caused him to be punished because ultimately he caused my figs to spoil, and because he was the one who caused my figs to spoil, therefore it was my fault that he died. You don't think so, Jeremy? Yeah.
What's he guilty? What's he feeling guilty?
Why is he feeling guilty? Well, you don't want no one. It's one thing testing someone in their learning and working out whether you should preserve the market for them. It's quite another thing if they then die.
Correct.
So therefore, he's feeling guilty. He's saying, had I not been the one who, the catalyst, Rav Dimi was saying that ultimately this all happened because of me. Rav Dimi brought the figs, right? So had he not. He's saying, had he not caused my figs to go bad, he would still be alive. He's not happy. No, he's not saying it's Chayiv Misa. He's not saying Chayiv Misa. He's not saying that none of them are saying they're Chayiv Misa. They're analyzing. They're upset. They're upset. If you look at Tosfos, Maschal. I know we'll come back to Rashi, but look at Tosfos. They were Maschal Ano. Can you see that? Ano Nishtei, second line. Each of them was mourning, groaning. Sha'al Yodo Meis Ravada. That Ravada died through them. Anyone whose friend dies as a result of their act, he doesn't enter the kind of the boundary, the perimeter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A tzaddik causing someone else to be punished is not positive. It's bad, and it says that evil shall not exist with you. So it's a very interesting. There's a lot of mentioned previously. We learned a number of Agadas in the first parak. Always with Agadah, you have to ask yourself, why are we being told this? What is the purpose of it? Why is it in the Gemora? And this is going to this whole story you now begin to see as it unfolds is going to the heart of a massively important philosophical question. About which is when an event occurs. That it was not direct, unintentional consequences. How much are you supposed to sort of, think, well, what was that? Exactly, assume responsibility, or even if you're not formally assuming, no one was saying they suggesting they're formally not. Well, maybe you say you cursed them, maybe maybe formally responsible. There's still a level of responsibility.
If you're going to turn around and say that they consider themselves off Madriga, and if they turn around and make a clodder, because Baruch will automatically carry it out. That's quite an assumption to make.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they're but he's worried about that because he says, look what happens. I pronounce the curse. Yeah.
Mamash goes by what they said.
Yeah. Tzaddik goes, God Tzaddik goes Hashem Chaim. Yeah, it is. Yeah. What was that?
Yes, it's quite specific in what he said, and it's quite, especially with the son. The Gemara's got a number of occasions where various people, even says, don't take the curse of a lay person not seriously.
That's right. That's right.
So for them, and how much the more so.
That's right.
The likes of Rabbi Yosef, and we learn like with Yehuda, was going even a partial one that had an impact. So
absolutely.
I'm sure Rabbi Yosef would have known that. So what he said was.
Although what we see from the continuation is that there are a number of different options as to why he was punished. It's not clear that it was because of that. And also the dilemma that Rav Yosef has, I say dilemma, is that, you can feel from the words that he's terribly upset. And that's why he did it, right? He's terribly upset at the disgrace that Rav Dimi has suffered. He feels it's wrong, and therefore he speaks out.
Where does the Reish Galusa fit into all of this?
Well,
surely he was the one who said to go and test him.
that's true, and I don't think the Reish Galusa is one of the people who claim or worry about their responsibility for it. The whole identity of the Reish Galusa and the way the Reish Galusa interacts with the Chachomim is a very complex one, because he does, and you see the way he sent Rava, and he's like, he's very much kind of in control of Nachman. I think is very involved with the Reish Galusa at various points in the Gemora. That's a whole different story as to how what status the Reish Galusa, or some of that I think were related to the Reish Galusa. There's a whole complication there as to that.
Same on whole time, is that?
No, couldn't have been. I mean, it must have been different people.
My concern with Rabbi Dimi is that his excuse is that my fig strike, not that I didn't answer the question right, or that I went back to Rabbi Yosef and I complained.
Yeah.
He's blaming on his figs. I feel like he's not taking responsibility.
Well, he's not blaming on his figs. He's saying that the punishment came because of me. Because had I not had my figs survived, or had it not happened, then then I would never have been upset.
Maybe he should have gone sooner when he saw it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
It was probably a time period between after no one's coming to him, they died, and then he goes to complain. He should have complained straight away and dealt with it, rather than, oh, now I'm upset because they've died. Now I'm going to go complain.
Yeah, maybe saying he should have done it. Yeah, he should have done it a different time. It was not. The question, the real question also is here, is why what they're not doing, each of the Amoraim, is they're not avoiding the responsibility, even if it seems relatively remote. I mean, obviously, we'll carry on. Abai says, I caused me punished. Because it said to Rabbanon, and this is a totally different episode. Well, I think it was related to. We'll see. Adam Garmisu Garmi Be'abai. I said to the Rabbanon, whilst you're chewing bones, literally. In other words, you're going to learn. You're not just chewing bones. You're not learning as deep as you could. And Abayas has two ochli bisra shmeino beirova. You should go and eat, fatty meat in Rava's house. Rava's going to tell you more Torah. So Abai is saying that it's because of me. It's because of me that he was punished, because it was only because of me that Rav Ada bar Abba went to learn with Rava. Had Rav Ada bar Abba not gone to learn with Rava, he would never have been sent on this mission, and then he never would have died. So Abai is saying it's my fault for telling them to go off and learn with Rava. For Rava says, I know Rava's the fourth one. He says, I punished him. Because when he went to the Beit Tabcha butcher to buy a bone of meat, he said to the butchers, Anosha kilma bisra mikame shame de Rava, the anah difno mine. Okay, so he said to the butchers, I will take a piece of meat before Rava's servant. Why? Because I am greater than him. I am greater than him. So in other words, what was he doing? What was he doing? Why was that got to do with Rava? Because it was really a shaming of Rava. He would walk in. Rav Ada bar Abba would walk into the butcher, and there would be Rava's servant there, and he would say, "I've got more significance than, at least more than Rava's servant, or maybe even more than." I don't know. He was trying to say more than Rava, but he was saying, "I'm better than Rava's servant." So ultimately, Rava's saying, "I caused it in some roundabout way, because because he said that it was associated with me. Had I not existed, effectively, he's saying, you've never been punished." So it's again, this is it's they go round in these directions. In other words, he was punished because of that sin, and it was me causing that hate, right?
Not buying me on the Smiya.
What do you mean? I see. You mean it's all decided in advance? Well, Yeah, but that doesn't mean that person is absolved of human responsibility for things. Also, that's the point of Tosfos. They don't want to be in a position, they're worried they'll be in a position that even though it's indirect and it was unintentional or whatever, ultimately something has been caused through them that's negative.
But it was still pretty silent.
Yes, that goes into the question. Yes, and that goes into the question of how you understand the hashgacha protis and exactly, yeah, which is a completely exactly right. But ultimately, they're on the way, however you understand that, ultimately they're still worried that they have caused it in some way, and that concern, and that's a real concern. Yeah.
To reconcile the point.
Again, another message of this Gemora is, would say, just from learning it, would say what that how much how careful they were about what they did and the consequences, and they're thinking back. It's like a cheshbon hanefesh, thinking back over the course of that day or that month. Oh well, this happened, and I knew why. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, "I know Anishte." He said it was my fault. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Reish Kala Hava. Rav Nachman Yitzchak was Derish Barabim. So he was the one who gave the droshes on Shabbos. So every time before he used to I think he used to finish it. Marahit Ba'adei of Adabar Abba. I know. So before he went to the shir, Marahit Ba'adei, Rav Adabar Abba l'shmaite. So he used to go through the learning with him, goes through the shir with him, and then he used to go in to give the shir. Oh yeah, but that day, Rav Papa, Rav Hana Berei, to Rav Yehoshua, Rav Adabar Abba, that particular day, Rav Papa and Rav Yehoshua took hold of Adabar Abba. They held him back because they weren't at the end of the shir, probably the previous day. Okay, Rashi gives two different pshatim in what exactly this. What exactly was why they held him back? Whatever it was, what the siyuma is. Either way, they weren't at some. They wanted to hear him repeat something they'd missed in learning. These two Amoraim, so they stopped him going to prepare the shir with Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. You understand? He used to prepare the shir with Nachman Yitzchak every day, and they held him back that day, so he wasn't able to take part in preparing the shir. They said to him, "They said to him, tell us those sugyas of Ma'aser Behema that Rava discussed." Some say that's what they were learning. They were in Bechoros. Ma'aser Behema is the end of Bechoros. He wanted to know the sugyas, the end of Bechoros. How did Rava say them? Amalu, he said to them, Rava, this is what Rava said. This is what Rava said. He gets caught up in his learning, in the questions they'd ask him, and he was late for his appointed time for Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, and he never came. The Marshal is the Girsa here. 1 second. He was late from Nachman Yitzchak. Also, Rabbanon, they came and they said to Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Rabbanon said, "Come to Nogalon, Lama Yosef Mar. Come on, we're going to start the shir." Rav Nachman Yitzchak was waiting for Rav Abba. Why? Because Rav Abba will go through the shir before he start, prepare it with him or whatever. And he didn't come. He said, "Get up, we've got to start the shir already. Why are you sitting down?" Amalek said to him, "Yasivna, I am sitting, v'kom natrano la'arsh seder Rav Abba. I'm waiting for the mitzvah, the coffin of the bed, literally, of Rav Abba." In other words, he seemed to be so sure that he would never have missed it unless he had died. Adachi, whilst that was going on, the voice came out and they heard the call that, in fact, Rav Abba had died. No, just people. The word, just they do, absolutely. The car, the car in Yerushalayim, the car that goes around saying, "What?" We'll go the one with the speakers on the roof. If someone was niffed anywhere, that type of thing. Huh? That still goes on, what? Yeah. No, there's a car that goes around with announcing for, unfortunately, if someone's niffed, yeah. Levi also take just going before. Anyway, Mistabra is Stabra Rav Nachman Yitzchak Anshe. He says it's logical, says the Gemara, that it was Rav Nachman Yitzchak who actually caused him to be punished. That it was Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Okay, doesn't say why. The one doesn't explain why it was, or why it's logical as Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. And in what respect? In what respect? Because of what? Because he said, "I'm waiting for him to come." Is that what it was? What doesn't really spell it out?
Well, no, he's the only one who alludes to the death.
Yeah.
Identical.
Yeah.
All the others had a.
Yeah, he says it directly. Yeah, Rav Yosef cursed him, but he didn't say what the curse would be. Didn't say how it would be fulfilled. Whereas Rav Nachman Yitzchak said, it almost like decided that he was going to die. I mean, not quite, but this way, yeah. Let's see Rashi. On all this. So Rashi is Noket Leishukah. It's Rashi about a third of the way down, yeah. Noket Leishukah Hechra is announced name called Ish Be'er Grogus Elahu. He should be one selling figs in the city. Smell his jug, whether it's wine or vinegar. Check him out. See whether he's Chacham, whether he's not, whether he knows his stuff. Then Rashi just explains where this phrase comes from. This reach, the smell of the wine, when you smell it, see whether it's good, that's called tohi. Same in two different places where you see the word tia that is used in terms of the smell of the wine. They call it the nose, don't they? The whiskey has a nose. No, that's right. That's what it is. Basically, what? No?
Wine has a bouquet.
Oh, does it? Oh, wow. Impressive. Kafifal mitzvah salnat saim shalarova is a basket of wicker basket. Malvi choshkim uchol. The shaila was: is it considered to be digested? Is it like dung and it doesn't receive tumah anymore? Amalei Rav Dimi Rav Ado Marni Rava. Rav Dimi said to Rav Ado, "Are you Rava Atau Rava? If you shama Rava Shugadlo air, he heard that Rava was the great man in the city. Basava Shuzeh, he thought he was him, but of course he wasn't. Sandale Sandale Kol Sandalo, he hit on his shoe, b'makah with a stick, derech schok, in a laughing way. Kshim shemakin lemisha eno choshev, like he just disregards someone who's not important. Delo shehiyeh shelo nimna melahapora. He said he gave him this curse. Rav Yosef, who didn't delay from punishing the disgrace of his shaming, the Malka the Edom Afbisha Edom, even though he was an Edomite. Al Sarfe Machmas Bezoyan. He burnt his bones because of a disgrace. What? Who what? Bezoyan, yeah.
He burnt the bones.
No, that was why he was punished. It was a Bezoyan to do so.
See, they did three things wrong, and this was the fourth. And for the fourth that they got.
Yeah. That's right. The fourth one is Ler Shivenu. In other words, it could be that the three would have been forgivable, but this fourth one, you have to look up the possible. Presumably, this is the reason. Is it Amos?
Fourth one was the straw.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Just seeing one thing the Marshal says here. So there's also he said he was greater than brothers. Yeah. Okay. Maybe says there's a long marshal on this. Let's just finish Rashi first. Anyway, the Malka sorry, said that. He would say to the Talmidim, whilst you're going to Abai to grind bones, to learn, you're not learning properly. Go and learn a wonderful, expansive halachas with Rava. You have to realize that that's a remarkable statement that Abai has made. That he told the Talmidim to go to Rava. Abai and Rava are the great sparring partners, yes, through the whole of Shas. Abai and Rava, Abai says this, Rava says, halacha hechzak Abai b'yal kagam, halachas like Rava, except for 6 cases where the halachas like Abai. I was listening to Leslie the other day, it comes up in the Gemora sometimes, havoyos to Abai and Rava. What's havoyos to Abai and Rava? The Gemora uses the phrase havoyos to Rava. We translate it as the questions of Abai and Rava, right? So Leslie asked me, what's that word havoyos? Havoyos meaning like the present tense. So I thought maybe, at the top of my head, it means because they are representative of the fact that the Torah is alive. They symbolize debate, Abai and Rava, if you know what I mean, right? There are the machlokas in the Gemara, but Abai and Rava is like, You want to get a good machlokas, okay, look up a Bayin Rav and Shas. Right, so that's what it is. Hava is like the present tense. They're like the living Torah. Is they're trying to have it out between. Here, Abai tells the Talmidim, you want to really learn proper Torah, go to Rava. It's an amazing thing, it was all a Shem Shemayim. Yeah, it was a Shem Shemayim. There's no exactly.
What does it mean? It means that Rabba's Torah was greater than Abaya's.
I don't know if it means he permanently said to them always to do so. There was an occasion. Yeah, when he said to them, how did Rav Adabar Abba end up at Rava? Maybe he was usually with Abai or whatever, because there was an occasion when Abai said to him, listen, guys, my Torah doesn't compare to Rava's. You better go and learn with Rava. And that's why he ended up with Rava. Yeah. So anyway, so he says, that's right. He says, shliach to buy meat. Reish kala derish brabim shabbosos. He was derish in public on Shabbos. That's the reish kala. And why did they stop him going? We said that they stopped him going to do his normal job. This Rav Adabar Abba. Some say they weren't at the when the decision was made to appoint Rav Nachman, the head of the kala, to give the shirim. They weren't there. So the first pshat in Rashi is they stopped him going because they didn't realize that Rav Nachman was giving these shirim. He didn't realize he'd been appointed to do so. Some say the Pirka, the Rav, the Dorish B'Shabbos, Haregel, Hilchos, Halachos, and Moris Perek Achon Shal B'Choros. They weren't at the end of the shir, the Rav Darshan on Shabbos and Yom Tov, the halachos which are in the last parak of B'Choros. Shmaitzim Ma'azim Perek Achon B'Choros. Rav Amrina B'Seif the Pirka. Rav says them at the end of the parak. Rava said Rava says these halachos at the end of the parak there. Also, Rabbanan Yeshiva Boim Lishma, the Yeshiva came to hear. Natrana Arse the Rav Ada Animet Sape. He said, I'm waiting Khan here. Shaviu as a mitas Rav Ada Shemes. He says, I'm waiting for the what's it called? Waiting for the mit of him to come. The Rabbeinu Gershom says that he was so upset that he didn't come to look through the drasha with him. And that's why he said this. That's why he said this words. I just want to see the. I just want to see the Mashal a second. It really helps shine any light in this. There's a lot of it is to do with whether they're showing enough the right respect. Lazilzel b'chvoid rava.
Is this why the Talmud have Rabbi Kika? Is this what's going on there? Could be.
I mean, this is obviously sort of generations later, time of the Amoraim, but it's still an issue in that way, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a different learning Rabbeinu Gershon about the Barabba wanting to die because of his sins?
I don't think so. You're talking about the very last one.
Yes, he says,
yeah. Why did he die? No,
he felt so guilty.
I think it means he died because he caused so much pain to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak.
Yeah.
Because he didn't turn up.
So Rav Ada bar Abba
was punished min hashamayim.
Because it's caused
pain. And that's what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said it was my fault.
Oh, okay.
And the Gemora says that seems to be the case indeed, that it was Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak who caused it.
I was trying to use that with the Rav Idiot.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be saying. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's see the Mishnah. Person who has a wall which is next to his wall, his friend's wall. He's not allowed to put another wall there unless he distances it 4 amos. So the problem obviously here is, well, how did the first wall get there? You got a wall, yes, one wall, and the wall is in the other guy's property, and then you have your wall. And if you want to have another wall, you've got to be 4 amos away. So Where's the third wall? Okay, so obviously there's no third. We'll have to see what that means, right? But either way, you see it's going 4 amos away. Hachalonos, windows, connect on Arba amos. So this is the rule principles of privacy and not to darken someone's light. Yeah, if you have windows, there are windows in a wall. You want to position a wall opposite those windows. You got to make sure that the top of the wall is higher than 4 amos above the top of the window, which is quite a lot, right? The top of the wall must be at least 4 amos higher than the window. If it's or 4 amos lower than the window, so no one can stand on top of the wall and look into the other guy's windows, right? Or if you have the wall here and there's a wall with windows in, and you're positioning your wall opposite that wall with the windows in, you with me? Yes, it's got to be at least 4 amos away so he can still get light in. These are all the considerations you have to have if you want to build a wall facing someone's windows. Not a good thing to do, and this is how it is, yeah. And this is what their rules around it. Let's see the Rashi. Obviously, wasn't explain the first case how that works. Windows, someone has windows open to his the friend's courtyard. Pardon? Yeah, they're already there, right? And he's got a chazaka of 3 years of having the windows in that place. And then the owner of the courtyard wants to erect a wall there. He has to evaluate 4 amos. Now that's very important what Rashi adds here, because the question is obvious. How on earth can the guy have windows facing someone else's courtyard? Remember the chatzeros in those days was like a room in the house. They did all sorts of private things in their chatzer. And we learned in the first parah, there are all sorts of rules around, what you can do in terms of overlooking a chotzer and, the privacy that's needed in a chotzer and all these things like this, right? So how on earth could this person, how do you have the setup of a chotzer overlooked by windows that you then have to discuss whether you're allowed to build your wall? The answer is because he had a chazaka 3 years. He had it there for 3 years. The guy hadn't objected. And therefore...
It'll make a difference if he put it up himself.
Who?
The person with the windows.
What do you mean?
Or vice versa.
Put what up?
So we're saying there's a house.
There's a house with windows in, and the windows are facing a chotzer. And one day, the owner of the chotzer wakes up in the morning and thinks, I don't really like this. I don't like this guy being able to see in my property. I want to build a wall opposite his windows. You can't, right? Unless you don't block his light and you don't build a wall in such a way that you can see into his house or someone climbing on top of the wall can.
Oh, he said the other case.
If it's less than 3 years, sounds well. Then it could be less than 3 years. You can object to the windows, and he might have to remove them then because he hasn't got a chazaka, I think.
Well, we did say as well that it was one piece of land and they sold half. Was the other option?
Yeah, that was a case where you could have. Yeah, what was the case there where you could?
The wall, the middle.
Yeah, you can have an existing setup where a person owns the whole property, windows and wall, whatever, windows and chotzer, and sells one bit off. That would be another case. That's interesting, yes. That would seem to be another case. Yeah.
The first 2 walls that go up, they require permission.
What walls? Which walls?
You're saying that the mission said that he has.
Oh no, that's a problem. The first line. We'll get to the first line in a second. The first line is a problem. As it reads in the Mishnah, you can't read it because it doesn't make sense. Well, why? How can you have a wall? You have a wall and then you have a third. Where's the third wall? Right. So yeah, we'll get to that. The more we'll explain that. But yeah, that yeah. So this is yeah. Yeah. So this is how Rashi guys is doing it. And it's Beimel Malon. If he wants to uplift it, he has to make sure that the wall is 4 amos higher than the windows. Yeah, has to be 4 amos higher than the windows. Now, Beimel Martin, if he builds it lower, has to be 4 amos lower than the windows. This reason, which I basically already explained to you, is the Gemora explains it goes into why it is. You've got to have this distance of 4 amos above or below. You have to do 4 amos away so it doesn't darken. Yeah, it doesn't darken. That's the other reason. So now let's see the Gemara. The Gemara is going to deals with this problem. How could the first wall be built next to the other guy's wall? So he said, you've got a wall next to someone else's wall. You can't put another wall there, unless you're farmers away. So how did you put the first one there? How was the first one? How was the first one so close anyway? Yeah.
Sorry, you need a second.
Second one's the first one.
There's one.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. The kama means the first.
Additional rule.
Yes, the first of the neighbor, first wall of the neighbor, right? The first wall of the neighbor. You see, because if you just read the Mishnah, what it seems to be saying is that you have a wall. This guy has a wall, and there's another wall. You have a wall. Your wall is right next to his wall. If it falls down, when you build another wall, it makes this farmers away. So the Gemara says, how could your first wall be so close to his wall? You should have needed the farmers there already. We haven't explained why you need farmers. We'll get to that, right? The Gemara says, this is what it's saying. It says, Habol ismoich, someone who comes in the first instance to put his wall next to the other guy's wall. Lo yismach elohim kain hirchik mimenu arba amos. He's not allowed to go so close unless he is 4 amos away. So in other words, he just changes the Mishnah and says, the Mishnah doesn't say another wall or whatever. It's just saying, you're coming along. Well, again, we haven't found the reason. You're coming along, you're building a wall. You've got to make sure there's a 4 amos gap between his wall and the wall that you're building. Right? Got it? No. It's not very big. It's not very big, but we have to see why in a second what it's for. You'll see in a minute what it's for, right? Okay, but it's quite big actually. I would venture to suggest that very few people have side alleyways, side passages going down the side of their house wider than 4 amos. Now, an amos that. I mean, maybe, but most people, if you have a side passage, how wide is it? Like that? Is it meters? That's the standard thing, right? There you are. So right, so you're not going to get more than that. I mean, yeah. So there you are. So it's quite a decent size. Well, it's what you need it for, right? If it's a passageway, it's decent size. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, we'll see what it's for. Rover's question. That's the focus. Obvious. It says someone whose wall is next to his friend's wall. Right? So you can't just change the Mishnah like that. The Mishnah says a wall next to another wall, and then you put the third wall, right? So Ella Omar Rav, this is what it's saying. Someone who has a wall next to his friend's wall 4 amos away, the nofal, and that wall falls down. He's not allowed to put the wall, rebuild the wall, so a new wall, yeah, another wall. And unless he has a 4 amos gap. At my time, what's the reason for the 4 amos gap? Because the compacted earth through people walking between the walls helps the walls, helps the foundation of both walls, right? The people leaving a thoroughfare actually helps the walls. In those days, they probably didn't have as strong foundations as we have. And it was actually a really important part of the process. And therefore, it's interesting. This has nothing to do with Hezekariah. You're going to look it up on probably no. This is an essential necessity to, if you build a wall too close to the other guy's wall, right? To the other guy's wall that is already there, the wall of his house, right? What you're going to do? You're going to end up preventing it as a public thoroughfare between the houses. I know we're thinking sort of gardens and back gardens, but it doesn't sound to be, it's like that. It's just the people generally are going to use it as a cut through. If you restrict that cut through, you are weakening the land and the foundation of the wall. Does that make sense? I'm not a builder, but that's what, yeah. It's a building regulation. It's a building regulation. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now just look at Rashi in a second. Yeah, look at Rashi. You're beginning top of the page. Yeah, top of the You're putting a coastal next to the wall of his friend. I was already there. Don't bring it nearer. And what's the reason? that which they dosh means to thresh, thresh with the feet, so crush with your feet, yes. Bein shnei aksolim, between the two walls, tomid moel shnei aksolim, it consistently helps the two walls, lahakshos kakoros yisodus aksolim v'le'amotu, to strengthen them, the foundational, the floor, the foundational walls, so they don't become destabilized. They don't become stabilized. So that's the reason. That's the reason. Okay.
Brother's interpretation is that we still don't have a halacha that says you can't build one wall to another wall. The one wall from another wall has to be for hummus.
Well, we do. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. The Rava, yeah. Okay, this is really Tosfos kasha, right? Because Martin, your question is very simple, right? Why do we have to have a kind of a convoluted case? We want to get to the bottom line, which is make sure you always leave a 4 gap between the houses, otherwise you're going to damage the wall, damage the foundations. Yeah, that's what we want to say. So the Tosfos asks, Tiksha Revom, top of the Omud, Loma deloma leila minkit b'chai gavna. Why talk about this case? Shoylo kosel b'roch garbamas and nofal. He had a wall that was far away, and the wall fell down. Just tell me halacha. You're not allowed to put a wall next to an existing wall unless you have a 4 gap. Like you say, that's the straightforward building regulation, right? For Leikala Meima, he says, don't say, says, right? It's only in this scenario where it was already 4 amos away and the first person had district already, that you can't make this. He's got a problem with the continuation of the Gemara. The Gemara is going to ask later on that whatever, we'll see. It talks about how there's a problem of needing space for a ladder in Mishum where so there's got to be space to get the ladder up there in order to. This is about where one wall is making sort of preventing light getting in, and it talks about either way. He says it doesn't fit with the continuation of the Gemara. So Toras doesn't resolve it, right? It doesn't actually seem to resolve this this question as to why it is set up in this way. I've written a note on the side that Toras, the Rosh answers the question. The Rosh and Simon Yud Dalet, since we want to make sure that Martin is able to sleep tonight, we better look up the Rosh. Otherwise, we'll leave him in suspense the whole week. A second. So the Rosh says like this. What was that? All right, and it's all about aspirations. Ravusa Komash Malon. I mean, if you want to see the Rosh, you can, but it's in Simon Yud Dalet if you're following in a standard full edition, full size edition. Perek base Simon Yud Dalet in the Rosh. It's about in the inner column. It's about a third of the way down. So he says, Ravusa Komash Malon. It's coming to tell us a chidush. Afal pisha zeh yomim rabim. Quarter way down. Even though there was a long time, many days, there was a narrow place between these walls. And people have spent a long time walking through. So the earth has been compacted for a long time. You still got to maintain that distance when it falls down and you build another one. That's the chiddush. That's what there is. It's like an extra chiddush that slips in. Okay. And it's interesting. The Papua Charifta, which is the Pirish on the Rosh, says that it seems to be saying that that you can't. Why is it that just with 4 amos people will go and a bit less they won't? Because that's how the measure the all midas chacham were like that. Yeah. They will go around. If it's less than 4 amos, they go around. So it seems to be there was already 4 amos there. Yeah. Okay, now there should have been another question here, which I would have been incredibly impressed if anyone would have answered. I didn't get it either, but it's to do with something we.
Is it the implication that you don't have to build four amas away normally? Because if a wall falls down, you might have thought, well, now it's fallen down, I can build it with the correct distance, which is less than 4 amas. Whereas you wouldn't need to create that scenario. So in other words, the starting point might be less than 4 amas, which is why you might think now it's fallen down, I can put it to 3 amas or whatever the correct.
Well, what's the starting point? No, the starting point is 4 amas, right?
What I'm saying is the way the structured question raises a question of whether it really is 4 amas, because you know, to say now it's fallen down, and then maybe I can put it to where it should have been in the first place. Do you know
Right.
what I mean,
Yeah.
it's about half a minute. Whereas if you don't put it at some place, there's a half a minute. I thought maybe that's
I know, I'm trying to understand it because it's important, I think. Well, you're saying that the hover minute could have been,
that it was less than 4 amas.
yes, there was less than
Why
4
before it
amas.
starts with it's all fell down. So now it's fallen down. You think,
Yes.
well, now it's fallen down. I can put it where the halakha allows, which is nearer.
Because
It's less than 4
Oh,
amas.
which is,
the earth has already been compacted.
yeah,
And the
no,
earth has been.
yeah, you're saying, yeah. So the chiddush is that it's got to be 4 amas. Yeah, there's got to be 4 amas. Yeah. Well, it could be that's all part of what, what we're saying. You got to maintain the 4 amas, both at the beginning and all the way through, whatever. But no, the question that Tosfos brings on the previous Omid is to do with what we learnt originally from Rava. It's a brilliant question, absolute genius question. This is only something which more recent joiners this year would never have got. You haven't, I didn't get this. You couldn't sit back because you didn't. You didn't. But basically, we spent many weeks, quite a few weeks, learning the shitta of Rava about the first person. Do you remember, according to Rava, who says Osa Lismo? Do you remember that? Right? Rava's shitta is, there's a whole machlokus about where the first mission in the parak talks about digging a bar. You dig a pit, and that's potentially going to weaken the foundation of someone else's pit, someone else's bar. So I have a pit in my backyard, and you've got one in yours. When you dig one in yours, you're going to weaken my foundations. And the question in the Gemora was, the machlokus in the Gemora was, Abai and Rava, whether the first one has to distance his bar. That means to say, if there's no pit in the next door, I'm the first one digging a pit. Do I have to make that same distance so that when he digs his, it won't be weakened by my actions?
Anticipate.
Exactly. You have to anticipate it. So the question that Tosfos asks is, according to Rava, how could the first one build his wall in the first place on the edge? The setup in the Mishnah is Misha kosalo samach lakosal chaveroi. So you've got a kosel, a wall that belongs to person A. Your wall is 4 amas away. If it falls down, make sure it stays 4 amas away. How could the first one build his wall there? We're assuming it was. We're assuming it was on the edge.
The answer that we gave before that he didn't build the wall, he inherited it.
Maybe the rules are different if there's no wall existence for the first one.
Huh?
If you're the first one to build the wall, the rules are on the rules.
No, but Rava's chiddush is, that's the point. Rava's chiddush is you've got to anticipate. There's always two partners in these debates. This is the main theme of the whole parak, right? To what extent, this parak is focused on this principle more than anything else, right? To what extent do I need to worry that actions that I do in my property might have a knock-on effect in yours? Here we're saying a halacha, but I've got to worry to the extent that if I build a wall in my property, which restricts the walkway between, I might weaken the foundations of your wall. You might think that's a bit far-fetched, but if you remember about the bees and the honey, the mustard, there was a whole case of where bees went and ate the mustard and then they came back, and because they ate the mustard, therefore, what did they do? They'd eat the honey because they got their mouth was sharp from the mustard, so you had to make. So basically, there's a whole thing. This was a big deal, the mustard and the bees. We'll come back to the mustard and the bees. You won't miss the mustard and the bees because we're doing it in a few weeks' time. Well, yeah.
We have answered this question. This question was answered.
Right. That what? Well,
that he didn't actually build the wall. He simply inherited it. I mean, it could be that there was a field. There was no intention of building another house next to it. He just inherited.
Okay. That wasn't 1 second. That wasn't no kimta. So we resolved some of the questions that we asked on Rava by saying, well, the scenario was, but we didn't ask from this case. And Rava doesn't seem bothered by this case. Rava's here. Rava's talking in the Gemora. We saw two opinions just now. We saw Rabbi Yehuda and we saw Rava. Is Rava not bothered? Rava says the story is Hachi Gatoni, someone who has a wall next to his friend's wall 4 miles away and it falls down, right? He's not allowed. He's not allowed to be. Then you've got to make sure. One more second. Rava himself is sorry, I didn't finish what we were sort of explaining before. I said the principle of the parak is how much I have to worry about what goes into my problem and affect yours. Rava holds, one second, let me finish. Rava holds you have to anticipate a future development in someone else's property, okay, even before it happens. So that means to say, not only are there restrictions on me doing something in my property because there is a clear and present risk to someone else. For example, if I bring in a pneumatic drill into my back garden, the vibrations are going to weaken his swimming pool, right? Because the swimming pool's there. Now, Rava says, if you, person A, build a swimming pool, even though the guy has just got a derelict backyard that he's not doing anything with, you've got to be careful about your swimming pool because you're going to damage that one.
My point is that presumably is a foundation of, literally a foundation of how much.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's the whole thing. How much distance? That was the whole first sugya. Fine. How much it has to be? What? But here, Rava's not bothered. Why? And it's very important, the answer. The last few lines in Toras. Yeah, go on. What was that? Cool.
Because you want it to be quite close together. So it's
Yeah, but it should still be far enough away. It's still got to be far enough away. There's still got to be, you should have to, when you build a wall, it's very simple, right? According to Rava, that person A has to anticipate a later wall by person B. Each of them should be 2 amas away. There should be a rule. You've got to be 2 amas into your property. You've got to be 2 amas into yours. Simple.
Or he's assuming that there was a person A and a person B at the beginning. That one doesn't have to be a person B.
Yeah, but you see that
It was simply.
No, but you have to. You're correct, Jeremy, but you're getting caught up in what the Gemora used to avoid the problems on Rav. So we have questions on multiple brises and multiple questions on Rav and the Mishnah, and the Gemora said, "Well, don't worry, we can say Rav will say that it was a case of a kinyan. So he owned the whole property originally, and he sold off half of it. You're right, but this case should have been asked as a question to have to solve it that way." But the answer, Toras gives a brilliant answer. Look at the last few lines of the previous Omid. We're going to finish with this. The previous Omid. Yeah, the last 3.5 lines. It's always nice to see this inside. Yeah, the last 3.5 lines, the bottom of the Omid Toras. Can you see the Yesh Loimar? Deloy Osa Rava Lismoich. Rava's whole issa to put something close by when you're the only one in existence. Elamilsa de Migufei Ose Hezek. Only when something which it causes the damage. Aval Hocha, but here Hakosel Eno Mazik Klum. The wall doesn't do any damage. It causes footfall and the compression which is needed to solidify the foundations to be reduced. So Toras comes out with a very important kind of addendum to that whole first sugya that we learned, right? When Rava says you've got to anticipate your neighbor building something which by your actions today he might be damaged. He might be damaged by your actions today if he decides in the future to build something which could then be injured by what you've done in your property, which is Rava's whole chiddush, right? You've got to anticipate that might happen. That only goes so far as to where there is direct damage being caused by the thing that you're doing, such as digging a hole where you are now, either the water is going to go through or the land has become destabilized, right? But the wall is a step removed from that. You understand? The wall is nothing. There's no hezek. There's no damage from the wall. The wall's position, right, may cause a lack of a thoroughfare. You don't have to worry about that. But when person number 2 comes to build a wall, then that's now causing that injury because, right, and he's going to worry about it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Carry on next time. It's Hashem. Have a good week. Have a good evening.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for joining. Bye, guys.